Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another glorious session with me, Icarix, and your beautiful host, Kunagusis.
Yeah, well, shut up there. Yes, hi everybody, it's me, Kunagusis. With me is the pain in the hole that is Icarix.
I just tried to give him the most benevolent of
shut
compliments,
up, will you?
and what does he do? He mutes me. He actually mutes me.
Yes, and I'm doing it again. Anyways, so we
The nerve on this guy.
Yes, the nerve of me to want some peace.
Anyway, what are we up to now, Kunagusis?
Yes, as I was about to try and explain that before you so rudely interrupted me. So, we are
I could say you
sorting out...
start first, but whatever.
Interrupted me again, are you?
What's going on? Come on!
Yeah, okay, fine. So, we're sorting out a few affairs. I believe one thing I'm doing is trying to sell off a settlement using Timbe's trade region submod.
Here and speak as you wish.
The last part we had beaten Mosaic and subjugated them because I wanted to have as many satrapies as I could. It was just a fun idea, but it doesn't always work out super well in this campaign. Satrapal revolts and all that good stuff. But yes, we sold off that settlement.
Oh jeez, another slave uprising imminent. Well fucking done.
Yes. I chose to sacrifice a bull because some bad omens or something. So yes. So we're just building up our settlement in Hayastan, Tuspa. Hayastan is Armenia.
It's gonna need all those. It's gonna need all those renovations. What with a slave uprising imminent yet again?
Not in that location, but somewhere else. But we are building up buildings and trying to spread our Greek culture over.
Well, you never know. Uprisings they start out small, but then they can sometimes turn into a full-blown revolution. They could spread out anywhere. They could hit you at any moment, and you might not even know.
Yes, but this is a game.
No. Can't help but wonder, though.
Yes, and we are moving an army to attack Paphlagonia. The Brothers of Xenophon is the name of the army. Yes, the Heraclidai. Typically, I like to delay attacking settlements just so I can focus on other matters before I jump straight into the battle. But here we go. We are fighting.
It doesn't help to not be prepared at the very least.
Yeah, we'll sort out the matters. So yes, we are fighting an army that's inside Sinope alongside its garrison. This is one of our what I could like to call more offensively geared armies, one which has no phalanx troops in it. For better or worse.
Goody.
But yes.
So who are we fighting against here?
I already talked about it. We're fighting against Paphlagonia.
I wasn't paying attention, as usual.
Useless gate. So, we are deploying. We have a ranged corps of 2 units of slingers and 2 units of peltasts. Peltasts are on the flanks because javelins can be very deadly, hitting enemies in unprotected zones. And by unprotected, I mean areas where their shields do not protect them.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yes, you learn something new every day, so they say.
There's nothing wrong with every new lesson learned every day.
Of course, I never said it was a bad thing. I'm always constantly trying to learn. I've been still reading Goldsworthy's Punic Wars book.
How's that coming along so far?
Grand.
Any new interesting tidbits that we should know about?
Reading his account of the Battle of Cannae, which is probably one of the most famous battles in antiquity. Certainly one of the more significant battles.
Really? How so?
Well, let's just say it was one of Rome's biggest, and I mean biggest, disasters. So, now, to military history, ancient military history nerds and all, Cannae is not entirely unknown. It's pretty well known. It's a pretty significant affair. one of Hannibal's shining glories. Basically, Hannibal Barca had launched his war against Rome, which is what we call the Second Punic War. And this meant for him was going straight to Roman turf. So marched across the Alps and fought the Romans on their home turf. To that point, now the war begins around 218 BCE and Cannae takes place in 216 BCE, so this is about 2 or so years after the war has begun. In that period, Hannibal has beaten 2 large Roman armies. One at Trebia, the other at Trasimene. There's been a few smaller skirmishes. The Romans appointed a dictator. We've mentioned before in another video how dictator was an important office in Roman politics. One man with absolute power for a temporary amount of time. They appointed man Quintus Fabius Maximus, known as Cunctator, or the Delayer, because he decided it was best not to fight Hannibal head on and just buy time, just engage in small skirmishes and just make things harder for him as he's marauding Italy. It'll weaken his already weak supply lines and make things harder for him. And it was working, but the Roman establishment, you might say, did not like it very much. It went against their ideas of what should be done. And he had a master of horse, which was a subordinate position to the dictator, and he went a bit rogue. It backfired on him. Well, eventually the terms of Maximus's office expired, and so he relinquished command for the time being. And the Roman consuls of the time, which were Gaius Terentius Varro and Lucius Aemilius Paulus, organised what is at that point the biggest Roman army ever mustered. Approximately about 80,000 infantry and about 8,000 cavalry. And they confronted Hannibal at a location called Cannae. Supposed the story goes the Romans alternated command on different days. Supposedly Paulus was rather hesitant to go fight Hannibal. Varro was more eager. And apparently it was Varro's turn to command, so Varro insisted on the fight. And it went pretty disastrously.
Not surprisingly.
Hannibal, the Romans essentially just saw that they had the bigger numbers, twice as many infantry, and figured they could just overwhelm Hannibal with that. Their cavalry was on the less advantageous side, so they just hoped the cavalry would buy enough time. But so what happened was, in a basic sense, Hannibal's army was mostly at that point, I think, consisting of Gauls. The majority of it were Gaulish troops. He had a smaller group of Africans and Iberians. And in terms of his infantry, his cavalry was also kind of mixed between some Africans and Iberians and Gauls. I think on one side, on one flank, he had a mixture of Spanish and Gallic cavalry, the other was his famous Numidian cavalry. The cavalry pretty much demolished the Roman cavalry in the fight, but the infantry battle was where things were pretty rough. Hannibal deployed his troops in kind of like an inverse crescent or arrowhead shape, with his more weaker troops at the centre. Hannibal was himself around that area, trying to give support. His more heavier Libyan infantry, who would have been wearing a lot of Roman equipment, were kind of like hiding of sorts in the flanks, behind the flanks in columns, so the Romans wouldn't really notice them. And as the fighting went on, Hannibal's centre was beginning to withdraw, and the Romans were just aggressively moving further in. which changed the shape of Hannibal's formation to more crescent or V-shaped, which kind of made the Romans' infantry a bit tight and harder to move around. Around this point then Hannibal's Libyans move out as they're hitting the Romans in the flanks, which causes a lot of confusion and chaos. And by that point Hannibal's cavalry had just finished off the Roman cavalry and hit the Romans from behind, so they're completely trapped. And it was already hours and hours after that of slaughter. You know, Romans just being slaughtered, a lot of them, killed. Supposedly there were some that buried their head in his hands to die in their own terms, some kind of suffocate, supposedly. But it was a very bloody, just awful battle for the Romans.
Ouch. I think that's a pretty big understatement to say the least.
Oh yeah, it was their biggest disasters.
More like a monumental fuck up more than anything else.
Seen as an example of Hannibal's tactical genius. And Paulus was killed in the battle. Varro survived. Varro's reputation would be pretty much badly damaged. Although it is partly wondered if maybe he probably doesn't necessarily share the whole blame.
It's not, I wouldn't say it's so much
a scapegoat, because Varro did not come from an established political family. He was always called a novus homo, meaning a new man. He was the first in his family to become consul. Paulus came from an established family. Also, Polybius, who is our closest source to the Second Punic War, he would be on very friendly terms with Scipio Aemilianus. Scipio Aemilianus was Paulus's grandson. He was adopted into the Scipio family. So there's also that element, that Polybius is maybe also trying to give a bit of a fairer shake, you might say, to the people to the side that he was friendly with. Really not my best wording. But yeah. So Hanoi was a big disaster for the Romans.
Or I wouldn't say it was so much because of Hannibal's genius, as it was more. It more came down to sheer arrogance and poor battle strategies, honestly.
To pull off and to expect from your enemy. It was an impressive feat. Yes, Roman incompetence was part of the thing here. Hannibal, which I guess plays into some of the debate about how good of a general Hannibal was, because
why would there be a debate? Because it seemed like he pretty much was a master strategist, as you suggested.
He was clearly very skilled commander, but also a lot of his enemies were. A lot of the Roman generalship were somewhat incompetent, you could say. Now that was partly more because of the Roman culture and the idea of just fighting an enemy head-on, aggressive, bullheaded tactics sort of thing. Brute forcing your way rather than clever strategy was, to that point, the Roman thing at the time, to a certain extent. And Hannibal took advantage of that.
It's amazing it didn't collapse in on itself if it was that strategy from the beginning, honestly, because that just seems like piss poor planning, honestly.
See, the Romans were kind of used to being the aggressors and fighting everything, but also, so Hannibal was quite skilled, and the Romans weren't very competent, but the Romans would eventually win the war. But the final nail in the coffin, I suppose, was Scipio Africanus, who beat Hannibal at the Battle of Zama, which I think we talked about before.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was probably one of Hannibal's first time fighting an actually solid commander, you could say. who didn't
One that
have
could
the
actually match
brash,
his skill set.
who matched Hannibal. Scipio learned from Hannibal. That's in a lot of ways, because he learned from Hannibal because he survived some of the other battles against Hannibal. So there's that element to it. And yeah, like, so it is perhaps a thing that people may wonder how good was Hannibal, because a lot of his enemies weren't the best. But he still was very skilled, very good. And a lot of his tactics are sort of admired to this day, and utilised and taught in military academies.
It kind of makes you wonder why they don't really talk about the other guy's strategies as well. What was his name again? The guy who defeated Hannibal.
Scipio Africanus.
Scipio Africanus. Are there any like books out there that detail some of his strategies actually?
Well, the thing is, I suppose Zama was his big thing, and the tactics of Zama was kind of a close call. He got lucky, to a certain extent he got lucky based on the fact that he had his cavalry were able to smash into Hannibal's troops.
But did he ever go on to did he ever go on to achieve other achievements aside from being lucky against Hannibal, or was that like the only thing he was notable for?
I think it was the main thing he was known for, and he's called Scipio Africanus because of Africa. But I think he would fall into some kind of scandal some years later.
Oh,
And apparently will be in a
puts
kind
damper
of
on
exile
things.
from Rome. Supposedly his gravestone said, Ingrata patria ne osa quidem habebis, or ungrateful father, and you will not have my bones.
Ouch, that's rough.
Again, supposedly. But yes,
What, you mean like it's never been confirmed?
pretty much.
Okay, I mean like it seems like an awful waste to like tarnish someone's name just because of like something that could have happened, you know? Unless rumors and myths were.
Well, I don't know the details, and I haven't looked into it much myself. But the idea is, I think he came into some sort of financial related scandal. In part, I'm going by what I remember from Mike Duncan's podcast, which is certainly very popular and very influential. The quality of the information might be a little so-so at times, under quite a bit of scrutiny. But the gist, as far as I
From
remember,
Mike Duncan himself or from the sources he gathered?
I think it's kind of the sources he used in his unquestioning of sometimes ancient accounts. His approach to historiography would get much better when he did his Revolutions podcast.
Did he just gather better sources when he did that podcast,
But I
or
don't
was he
think
more
learned
open?
better. I think he learned better how to do research and how to do historiography, which is one of the big things of studying history. It's just your sources and evaluating your sources. And he would, as I say, improve at that in later periods.
He would improve upon his objectivity, basically.
Just, well, I suppose that's his objectivity, I suppose, but more just his methodology and research would just be improved. And he would perhaps be a bit more skeptical of sources and better weigh up modern scholarship. Because I think some of the issue was, for example, when he talked about the brothers Gracchi and all that kind of political mess of that period, seemingly it seems like he just took the ancient sources at their word, based on the r/bad history posts I've seen on the topic. And basically he would take the ancient sources kind of at their word and didn't seem to check much of the modern scholarship, at least that's the impression, because it seems like for decades now modern scholarship seems to throw a lot of question on the account of that period and the nature of the conflict, because essentially the gist of that conflict was, as far as I understand, was there was a lot of due to a lot of Rome's recent conflicts and wars, there was a huge influx of slaves, which meant a lot of the rich landowners were more reliant on slave labor than actual hired labor. A lot of people were sort of in the city of Rome, but kind of struggling financially in all sorts. And I think the Gracchi brothers were trying to fight for their cause to some extent. Especially when I think they were up against a kind of corrupt oligarchic type senate. Keep in mind, I'm going with my vague memories of something that I learned-ish, that I kind of learned a bit years ago. I've not re-looked at this further, and like maybe I would intend to look into these more. So going by the top of my head, I can't give a very clear account, and I'm probably getting things wrong. But that's like the gist of it. That the crisis of sorts that was discussed about was perhaps at best an exaggeration by the ancient sources, if my understanding is correct. I need to do a lot more digging on it though to get a firmer idea.
Or when in Rome. Anyway, what's going on here now?
Yeah, so we're fighting, I believe it's Armenia.
The Armenians again.
There's an could be Armenians, I don't remember entirely, unfortunately. Basically, we have an army outside of a settlement. They're both small forces, but the army's in fortified stance. And then we're fighting the settlement garrison, reinforcing them. And the auto resolve was to feel kind of wouldn't have been a kind of battle worth fighting. The auto resolve was just not great. The losses would have been too high, I felt, so decided to manually resolve it. So
I suppose
right
that makes
now,
sense.
those are the enemy reinforcements coming, and they are in range of our archers. So the archers are hitting them. And of course they're being hit on the more exposed sides, so the shields will not be protecting them. We see our cavalry, infantry, engaging with some of their spearmen.
Doing a good bit of damage there.
Our Tyrell swordsmen with some archer fire are fighting their spearmen. Might be the Georgian spears or Caucasian spears.
What's the difference?
There's no Georgian spears in it, there's Caucasian spears. Just trying to remember what they were called.
Well, we've got them on the run at the very least.
And we have our Hetyroi fighting their royal cataphracts. Noble cataphracts, Basilicoi cataphractoi. The royal noble cataphracts.
Are they like the most? Are they like the most efficient cataphracts?
Well, they're just pretty early. I think if we're talking about the best cataphracts.
I guess if they have thicker armor
Well,
than the rest of the cataphracts.
I don't know. I think that's just what they're called in this, but the best cataphracts in the game will probably be your late stage Parthian cataphracts.
Why those? Why those in particular?
Their stats are very high, but also they also have the extra bonus of the Nisaean horse, which gives them pretty high mass for horses, I believe. The best mass of the ancient horse breeds.
Probably works well alongside the armor as well.
Well, yeah, the whole, as I said, the whole thing with cataphracts is they're fully closed and armored, and that means you want pretty big horses.
Especially ones that can handle the amount of heat stroke they'll probably be dealing with.
Maybe there's that element. But certainly, you'd want big horses. Now, when I say big, this is kind of relative, because the horses of today are quite big, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the size of horses we're talking about in this time period.
No?
No. Horses at this time period were actually quite small.
Really?
About the size of ponies today.
God almighty. I
And
wouldn't have noticed. Because,
so-
I mean, I know
so,
it's
like-
just AI and everything. I know it's just AI in this particular game and everything, but if we're taking a look at the horses from that time period, based on what we're seeing here, they don't look that small.
I would say
Now-
this: the I think the Nisaean horse, which was probably one of the biggest horses of this time period, was, I think, about the size of the modern day Przewalski horse, which isn't very big.
Makes you wonder if it was just an evolutionary thing.
It's just that over time, horses were bred to be bigger. And especially by the medieval period, as far as I understand. So, basically, so as it's been like, so you're talking about 2,000 years ago. In 2,000 years, we're able to get a horse to be is quite big now. That's over 2,000 years. It took time for horses to get as big as they are now. And that's just from selective breeding. But back then they were not too big. Not very big by our standards, but big enough to be ridden on and to fight on. So that you can wrap your legs around the horse. Give yourself the
They probably
leverage.
had, if they were small enough and they were able to wear that much armor, they probably had a lot of energy on them.
Probably you would want kind of good, sturdy horses for this job to be cataphracts. The cataphracts. But yeah, so to assist our general fighting those cataphracts, it looks like we are sending our Galatian spears. So,
Is there anything that can actually penetrate the cataphract shielding?
just anything normal, not just armor. They just have lots of it. They can still pierce.
This,
it.
I mean, like, I
Especially
assume it's pretty
gaps.
thick, so
Well,
I assume
the
that.
thing is, though, you're going to have gaps in armor.
Well, good point. Yeah, but I mean, like, surely, like the best kind of cataphracts, they would want like the thickest armor possible. So like even if they have weak spots, the rest of their body could be protected no matter what. You know.
The thing is, you still have to leave some bits exposed, and the horse's the underside is exposed.
Okay, that's a fair
So you
point.
could strike under, like the horse's belly, that's exposed. There'd probably be some gaps. Armor wouldn't have been as advanced as we get by, say, medieval period. So you're talking different parts of armor, like they'd wear some kind of breastplate, but they'd wear maybe armbands, segmented plate bands for their arms and legs, and they'd wear a helmet, and they might have a face mask with the helmet or something. So even their eyes would be vulnerable. You know, their eyes would be vulnerable, so you could get the eyes.
No, I guess.
Interestingly, the Ptolemies would field a kind of cataphract where their armor was made out of organic materials rather than metal.
Why organic?
Well, I think it was in part to protect them from arrows. It was, I think Ptolemy II. I'm trying to remember. I think Agatharchides of Cnidos is the source, and he mentions the Ptolemy II brought like few hundred Greek horsemen, equipped them in this kind of padded armor that covered them head to toe, leaving only their eyes exposed, and the mounts were also covered in this armor. So it was probably a degree of lightweight, and probably also for its own purposes of protecting arrow fire. And the thing is that, even just thinking of it now, this is Ptolemy II, so just after the Diadochi are beginning. The Parthians wouldn't really emerge yet, as far as I recall. So the idea of the cataphracting itself might not have really been a thing yet. I'm only guessing. They wouldn't have probably been as exposed to that cataphract idea to go for full metal stuff, because it's probably cheaper than going full metal. You know. So that's the best I can say at the moment.
We seem seem to be making a decent amount of progress there. We have our phalanx formation, building up a nice
bugger
defense
all.
there. Sorry?
Phalanx doing bugger all.
Doesn't look as though they're doing bugger all. Oh, and we are on the charge now.
Uh-huh.
Our own cataphracts making
They're not
short work of...
cataphracts.
Sorry?
They're not cataphracts.
Sorry, my bad.
They look like cataphracts.
From the distance, they do. It looked as though they were wearing armor from the distance.
They're not fully covered in armor.
Oh, okay. Never mind
The whole
then.
point of the cataphract is that the rider and the mount are completely covered in armor.
Okay, okay.
As covered as you can get. But wearing a bit of armor whilst fighting a horseback does not make you cataphract.
Okay. Here come our elephants now, here to rain carnage.
Yeah. Our Syrian elephants doing quite good work. Yeah.
And that's us. In a decisive victory.
Indeed. We only lost about 95.
That's not too bad, is it?
No? Very good. Now we can auto-resolve this one.
Indeed, we decide to finish off the Heracloid.
Heraclidai.
And we decide to kill the hostages.
Kill the captives.
At your command. Commander, ready for orders.
And we take Iconion.
We raise it. God, hasn't it had enough?
And that gives us all of Galatia, Galatia, and Cappadocia, or Galatia and Cappadocia.
Yippee! I'm building up some renovations there with a... Oh, we thought we'd go for a training field, but we decided not.
Yeah, trying to decide what would be handy for to suit each settlement. So decided to build an agora in Ankara.
A workshop.
Looks like we're looking to the workshop. Yep, in Iconion. The workshop is so we can get the scythe chariots.
Yeah, the spry little fuckers. And we decide to keep some hostages for ourselves.
We enslave those captives, since only just a couple.
Like to invest in the frontier garrison and disband some of our units there. So, some part of our 10,000 units.
The 10,000 would be a reference, opposed to the 10,000 in Xenophon's Anabasis.
Was that an actual army?
It was a name given in the Anabasis to the Greek mercenaries of Cyrus the Younger, because they were numbered approximately 10,000.
Interesting.
This is, yeah, so basically, so late stage Achaemenid Persian Empire, you had King Artaxerxes, I think that was probably the third. Do you remember Ctesias of Cnidus?
The name sort of rings a bell.
Wrote the Indica.
Oh, yeah, I remember now.
He was the physician of the Persian court of Artaxerxes III, I think it was, so it's that sort of period.
Okay.
So Artaxerxes had a younger brother called Cyrus, and Cyrus had his own ambitions to become king. So Cyrus hired a bunch of mostly Greek mercenaries, accompanying them were, I think, several hundred Thracian peltasts, and Xenophon was among this group, who were hired to help Cyrus in his rebellion against his brother Artaxerxes. This culminates at the Battle of Cunaxa, which is a bit of a disaster for Cyrus's force. Cyrus gets himself killed in the battle, and the Greeks take fairly minimal casualties, but their role in the battle isn't too significant. But they are kind of left with not much to do when the battle kind of fizzled out. And so they kind of are trying to get back home, is the gist of the story. So they're called the 10,000 in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Is the gist of it. Xenophon becomes one of the more principal leaders of the group after several of their commanding officers were executed. It's quite interesting though, because this is where you get to hear, it's one of the only accounts of Rhodian slingers.
Yeah?
Yeah, there was an incident where a satrap called Mithridates led this skirmish on the 10,000. And aside from the Peltas, the only ranged troops that they had were Cretan archers, who were struggling because they just couldn't really keep up with the range of the Persian archers and slingers. So they kind of went here. Apparently Xenophon himself says here, don't we have some Rhodians? They're not very good with the sling. Let's get them to use the sling.
I see.
With lead ammunition, and they proved to be quite effective. But anyways, I have to end it there because we're reaching an end.
Right.
So we'll see you all next time.
Yes. Just be sure to leave a comment, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you all shortly.
Thanks for watching.